Welcome to another movie plot. Spoilers ahead. The people of Champion City worship a class of superhero with very minor skill. A party takes place at the Shady Acres Aged Care Home where the genius Dr. Heller is making moves on a young lady. Suddenly a gang of villains going by the name of Red Eyes crash the oldies party and begin taking them for everything they've got. Before they can clear the seniors out of all their medication, an amateur superhero team attempts to make a name for themselves. With the Blue Raja's power of culinary artillery, the shovelers who can shovel like no other, and Mr. Furious. Together they try to stop the robbery, but their inexperience and lack of any actual abilities results in their defeat. Thankfully for the partygoers, the city actually has a real superhero. The powerful chrome-clad Soup smacks the Red Eye around the building, destroying the residents' medication bar in the process. The sponsor-covered Captain Amazing has been placed on a mantle by Jeffrey, Eddie and the rest of the city, while Roy thinks he is very much overrated. Captain Amazing sarcastically panders to the trio for their efforts in helping with the arrests, leaving Eddie and Jeff smitten by him while Roy wallows in the misery of defeat. Heller approaches Eddie saying that he has the firepower they need, but with the friends thinking that he is just a dementia-ridden resident, he assures them that he is only there for the chicks and leaves them his card. The bruised and beaten trio of friends leave to insults from the local police, and when Roy tries to stand up for himself he is instantly shut down by the imposing officers. The arrogant superhero pushes through his fan base to get to his limo, hearing that his Pepsi sponsor has pulled out. Amazing's crime-fighting prowess has practically made his job obsolete, causing his corporate sponsors to withdraw their support. Spending most of his days stopping petty crimes, Amazing's worthy adversaries are all either dead or in jail. His publicist Weems tells him that Deathman is dead. Father Doom got life without parole, and Baron Von Chaos got the chair. When he mentions that Casanova Frankenstein is in a nut house, Amazing begins to remember the good battles they used to have, giving him an idea. The insane asylum housing the supervillain Casanova looks like hell on earth, and the man himself is brought before a board to discuss his release. His psychiatrist Dr. Leek sits on the committee and argues for his release as a cured man, while the rest condemn the monster for life. Just then Amazing walks in using his alter ego, the billionaire lawyer Lance Hunt, needing a serious supervillain out on the street to continue his rise in popularity. Hunt pulls out a shopping list and pretends that it's a letter from Captain Amazing, arguing for the release of his nemesis under compassionate grounds. And just like that, the 100% still deranged psychopath is released back onto the streets. Down at the Lakeside Diner, the defeated friends argue about their costumes and characters, while their finances are in the red and the Blue Raja had to raid his mother's silverware for tonight's mission. Roy is the only one of the group that believes Lance Hunt is Captain Amazing, as Eddie believes Amazing wouldn't be able to see without wearing his glasses if that were true. A waitress Monica tries to take the team's order, but Mr. Furious begins to act rude towards her, as he says he is a ticking time bomb of fury. On their way out of the diner, the trio come across two criminals, Tony P and Tony C, but Eddie's wife is waiting up for him while Jeffrey is just a coward. Leaving Roy alone in his mission, where he takes off after the two disco boys on his Harley compatible. Their limo pulls into a mansion and Roy spies on them from the bushes, seeing that it belongs to Casanova Frankenstein, clean cut and looking as dapper as ever. He is finally reunited with his right-hand henchman Tony P, who is spending his time warming up the disco room. Casanova angers Tony with the reminder that Disco is dead, before Dr. Leek enters the room with a dead bird on top of her head. They walk out onto the balcony where Casanova remotely blows up the asylum, using the explosion as a lure to draw out his arch-nemesis. Captain Amazing shows up as Casanova enjoys a drink, and tells him to disarm his submicronic laser in his ring, disengage the psychotropic bacterium dart launchers hidden in his slippers, and turn off the cold fusion ultrasonic neurostunner in his drink stirrer, knowing the evil genius all too well. However, the hero of the city's entire plan backfires when he picks up a chloroform dispenser that activates, knocking the moron unconscious. We see that the shoveler lives just outside of Champion City with his family in a typical suburban home, where his wife Lucille tells him to return his son's vest for his game on the weekend. Eddie tells his wife that God gave him a gift, that he can shovel well and must put it to good use. Lucille assures him that he shovels better than any man she has ever met, but he must stop this second life. Over at the Blue Rajas he practices his fork handling skills, while his excessive incense causes his mother Violet to assume he is smoking the devil's lettuce in her house. The next morning Roy arrives at the scrapyard late for work, being given the impossible task by his boss of tearing down an armored truck with just a crowbar. When suddenly news breaks of the disappearance of both Lance Hunt and Captain Amazing, who we are shown as being prepared to have a machine called the Psycho Frackulator unleashed upon him at midnight. Mr. Furious attempts to rescue Amazing/Hunt and brings the Blue Raja and the shoveler to assist. but they are quickly foiled by the sprinkler system and discovered by the Tonys, who the trio mock for using guns instead of a weapon with a more disco theme. So the Tonys and the Disco Boys stomp the heroes into the ground. After their unsuccessful rescue attempt, the three realize that they need more allies, and talk about a guy called the Sphinx, whose power is that he is very mysterious. Eddie says that he can also cut guns in half with his mind, but that's still under speculation. Roy tries to ask Monica out on a date, but she just shuts him down. The team's first recruit is Invisible Boy, who takes the three strange men to his bedroom past his ignorant father. But he tells them that he can only go invisible when no one is watching, not even himself, and that you know you're invisible because you can just feel it. So the team try to leave, but he stops them, winning their sympathy and telling them of a network of superheroes that they can recruit from. While discussing if a character called the French Tickler should join them, a hero that the group all ignore comes into the diner. The Spleen feels hurt that the group is always dissing him, and begins to tell Invisible Boy his origins after he regrettably asks of his powers. At 13 years old, he cut the cheese and blamed it on an old gypsy woman, who cursed him to forevermore be he who dealt it. He pulls out some nose pegs and performs a demonstration of his SBD, a silent but deadly fart that can eliminate a target at 7 yards.
That's good shooting.
When the Spleen notices they are holding tryouts, the group decide to hold it somewhere with a pool, leading to a swarm of amateur superheroes taking over Eddie's yard as Lucille takes the kids out for the day. They interview the waffler who just burns people with a waffle maker, Pencilhead and Son who erase crime, the mysterious ballerina man who flares on them then leaves, and a few Wonder Woman wannabes who show real potential. As well as the bullfighter Radio Man Squeegee Man and the PMS Avenger, who only works 4 days a month. After an unsuccessful tryout, a worthy recruit shows up late in the form of the bowler, who uses a cursed bowling ball containing her father's skull as a weapon. The daughter of a famous bowler who was murdered by Tony P, though the death was ruled a suicide by the police, with him having simply fallen down an elevator shaft onto some bullets. Carol decides to join the ragtag group of B-listers with the intention of getting revenge for her father. That night, while going out on a mission, the group hear that she telepathically speaks to her father's skull, and that he suspects the Blue Raja as being either a commie or a fruit. The emboldened team ambush Casanova's limousine, and when he refuses to tell them where Captain Amazing is, they begin their attack. They all begin to smash the limo with their respective powers, doing nothing but cosmetic damage, doing nothing to Casanova himself but merely annoying him and running away before he can retaliate. They go out and get drunk to celebrate their first victory together, and wonder when we might finally get to see Invisible Boy's power. While leaving, the team is confronted and nearly killed by the Disco Boys in retaliation, but the firing line all have their guns sliced in half and flee confused as to their attackers' whereabouts. The group are saved by the Sphinx, an enigmatic superhero with actual powers who agrees to train them, making Mr. Furious even angrier at the change of leadership. The Sphinx teaches Jeffrey not to telegraph his attacks, for Eddie to use more than just a shovel, and Roy to learn balance, while pranking him with watermelons on his feet. The group flourish under the Sphinx's unconventional team-building exercises, which annoys Roy beyond all measure. While making their new superhero costumes, Roy gets frustrated at the Sphinx constantly using fortune cookie quotes for every question he asks. Finally had enough of it, he quits the team. Knowing that they will still be outgunned going up against Casanova, Eddie remembers Heller giving him his card, so the group seek him out, where they find him living in a deserted amusement park. Locating him living inside one of the amusements armed with a hairdryer. They are impressed at first but discover that Heller specializes in non-lethal weaponry, which would be useless. But when they try to leave, he throws a can tornado at Spleen, showing effectiveness as it tosses him through the air. He also shows off a fabric shrink ray that could shrink your clothes so tight you can't breathe, and a flamethrower that throws blame around the room, starting arguments. Roy catches Monica in a good mood at the diner and she agrees to let him walk her home, where she encourages him to ask for forgiveness from his friends. As the unnamed team all prepare to go into battle, Roy shows up and angrily tries to apologize but begins to shake, so the shoveler lets him rejoin to prevent a migraine. The team break into Casanova's mansion during a summit of several of the city's gangs, the Susies, the Suits, the Furries, the Frat Boys, and the Not-So-Goody Mob, where they all praise Casanova for his new machine, which he plans to use to lethally bend the reality of the city and its residents. Attempting to free Captain Amazing, the group find him still strapped to a chair beneath the machine. Things turn to chaos as Roy and Carol argue over which lever to pull. Jeffrey starts fangirling over Amazing, and Eddie begins to suspect maybe Roy is right in lawyer Lance's real identity. Lance tells Blue Raja the lever to turn the Psycho Frackulator off, but it activates it, warping and killing the incorrect champion of Champion City. So they all flee back to Dr. Heller's without Amazing, and wallow in despair as without him they have no hope of saving the city. As they argue amongst themselves, the best plan they come up with is to run away, when the shoveler finishes making his high cholesterol egg salad and refuses to run. He delivers a pep talk to each one of the team which inspires them to continue the good fight. So Jeffrey raids his mother's cutlery drawer again, but Violet catches him and supplies him with the finest silverware in the house. Eddie tells his wife that he loves her, and Roy tells Monica that he may die tonight, but she just asks him what his name is. So he tells her and she kisses him. With new resolve, the team overhaul an armored vehicle from Roy's workplace with Heller's wacky inventions, and gear up in their new costumes to attack Casanova's mansion once again. This time though, the group crash through the front gate and straight through the front doors into the mansion. The armored van protects the team from any gunfire, and Heller's quirky magnet invention robs the gangs of their weapons. Without their guns, the gangs all flee in terror as they lack superpowers to fight the team, and Casanova arms a laser that dissolves anyone who tries to follow them. But Invisible Boy notices this as his moment to shine, so the group look away as he closes his eyes and actually turns invisible. Turning off the machine, then turning back visible.
Yes.
They are then met by the furries all dressed to kill, so the Sphinx shoots them with the clothing shrink ray, giving them a wedgie they won't soon forget. Spleen shoots the not-so-good mob with the flamethrower, causing them to break out in a fight between themselves. The shoveler beats down the Disco Boys but has a challenge presented to him by Tony C, who he defeats by mixing it up with the use of a spade. Spleen is shot at by the assassins from the east and gets hit in the rear, but he still manages to use his powers to subdue them before collapsing. The bowler confronts her father's killer, who says he is protected by the god of haircare. Not being a killer herself, Carol lets her father's skull do all the work and get his own revenge by killing Tony P. However, Casanova holds Monica hostage and activates another defense system that fries the frat boys. So Jeff and Roy work as a team to overcome the obstacle, and Mr. Furious begins to fight the finger-wielding supervillain, but he easily gets defeated. The hour reaches midnight and the Psycho Frackulator begins to wreak havoc upon the city with its reality-bending powers. While the team works to disable the device, Mr. Furious unleashes his true inner rage and fights effectively for the first time in his life. He throws Casanova Frankenstein into the core of the Psycho Frackulator, which tears him apart. The whole team get together in a huddle and help the bowler to get close enough to drop her ball into the machine, and Carmine the bowler destroys it from the inside. They all escape the mansion together as it explodes behind them. As the sun rises, the team is swarmed by reporters who all want to interview Champion City's newest hero team. Their families watch them on the news be referred to as superheroes as Heller celebrates his team's victory. The reporter asks for the group's name, but they begin to argue possible choices among themselves, so the reporter just says that the city will forever owe a debt to these mystery men. And the movie ends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.
Disco is not dead. That is the passion.